Hey guys, this is Justin Cunningham with Procure SQL. In today's video, we're going to be looking at data engineering notebooks within Microsoft Fabric. Before we jump into that, I do want to mention there are a couple of new features within Fabric, one being the industry solutions and the other being the event house, which is within the Synapse real-time analytics section. We'll take a look at those two new features. All right, so let's get into the data engineering part. So let's go and act like we're going to create a new notebook. To do that, we're going to want to jump into the data engineering section here within Fabric and then click on the new notebook section right up here. So to save some time, we're going to jump into a notebook that I've already created. And this notebook that I'm going to show you here is creating our bronze layer within our medallion architecture for the modern data warehouse. As we step through this, what it's really doing is just taking a CSV file, it's landing it into a data frame, and then it's going to push it into the Delta table format. So that Delta table is going to be sitting out on our data lake, and then we can just link that into our lake house and do whatever we need to downstream. So right here, this image that we're seeing, this is a markdown cell. So if I were to actually double click on it, you'll see when it wants to pop up that it's just pointing to a ping file that's out on the web. So that's all that's going on here. And again, I would recommend doing as much markdown as you can within a notebook so that the developers understand what's happening within these given notebooks and can really guide you through the process. So to actually see what's going on here, we can hit view and you can say table of contents. And then within here, you can kind of see the overview of what's happening within this notebook. Again, all we're doing here is doing some imports so that we have all of these different functions and libraries at our disposal so that we can really get this data how we want to see it. And there's a couple other functions that you can create in here. This one's just going out and making sure if I do have a Delta table out there that I'm actually grabbing that data and making sure I'm only inserting new records and not creating a bunch of duplicates within my bronze layer. Because if I do that, it's really going to hinder performance as we start getting this up into our additional layers. Another big thing that we want to focus on here are parameters. So on the bottom right here, you can see that this is a parameter cell. You definitely want to make sure that you're doing that within these notebooks because you want to have them parameterized so that they can be reused by other processes as well, so that it can be really metadata driven and you can just pass in these different layer database schema tables, and then you can process through all of your data sets and get everything within your bronze layer and everything's very consistent. And then you don't have to manage a bunch of different notebooks out there. So really doing parameterization is the way to go with everything within Fabric or development in general. So as you can see here, this is reaching out to an airline delays file that I currently have out on the data lake, and then it's going to write it out into our bronze layer as a Delta table. So here, this is just populating a data frame. So this DF right here is the data frame that's being generated from this, I'm calling it an iron file path, which is really just like our landing zone or raw location, which is the CSV. Now tagging on a couple files as far as the load date of when that file was generated, and then the input file name will actually give me the exact file that data came from. Just that way, if you have a folder out there that says this was all loaded on February 20th, but you have 10 different CSV files, when you're bringing that all into the data frame, you want to be able to actually say, well, what file did this data really come from? So that can help you track down things as you may go through a debugging process if you're finding issues within your data. And then here's a couple other things that you can put within your notebooks. So this is just a data check to see if there's any data within my data frame, and if there's not, I'm going to exit out. So ms.sparkutils.notebook.exit will exit out of this notebook and it won't run any command cells below it. So that can help you save on compute. So if you know you don't need to do anything else, just exit out and then you don't have to run any more commands below. That could possibly save you money over time. There's also a lot of other different utilities that you can use within the MS Spark Utils. So that's something definitely to check out to get into the more advanced pieces of these notebooks. And then down here, there's just additional things that you can do. These are just standardizing column names, adding a row hash. So again, you can really put this centralized utility functions over here in your resources pane. So you can create that Python file that has all of your different functions that you and your organization or your development team are collaborating on to say, this is how we want our columns to look. This is how we want to do our hashing. And then you can standardize everything there, call it within any given notebook, because this can be reused across your environment. and really keep everything centralized and conformed. And then at the end here, all we're really doing is looking at that final data frame, and we're going to want to insert that into our delta table. And then that is going to create our final bronze table, at least through this iteration of this data set. So we can run all of this, and as you can see, there's already outputs that have happened here. And at the end of the day, when this ran again, since it's already been ran once, it says no new records to merge into airline delays. So all of this data is unique. We don't have a bunch of duplicates sitting out there. And then down here also, you can see I just ran a couple queries in other ways that you can look at this data. This is just saying you can select it from your actual Delta path. So this is just doing a display on the data frame because the spark.sql, when you run that select command, that's going to return a data frame. So you can just display that. Also, down here, you can see that this is doing a create replace temp view, and that's built off of the data frame. So if you are more familiar with, say, the SQL side of things, and you want to build these into views and possibly do, additional joining or anything you may want to do, you can do that. And then you can see this is me querying that temp view. So just giving you an idea, if you have multiple data frames that are floating out within your notebook, you can put something to a temp view, and then you can quick query it and do some QA checks against it if need be. And then down here, this is just the current data set. So this is the file that I brought in. This is my CSV file, and like you can see here, so this source file will point all the way out to my OneLake. It will go all the way down the folder structure, give me the exact CSV that I have out there. So it's a long one, but that can really help point you in the right direction if you're having an issue with your data and you're trying to debug something. And then finally, at the bottom here, it's saying what that merging data set is. So what new data needs to go into the Delta table, and we have nothing here. So it was ran twice. That data is already existing in our Delta table, and this keeps a clean bronze layer so we don't have a bunch of duplicates causing issue as we try to curate this into our silver and gold layer for our reporting. We don't want to cause duplicates downstream and create an unreliable data set for our Power BI reports. So this is how we can land that CSV data into a structured, solid foundation within our modern data warehouse architecture. And then we'll create a couple other videos showing you how you can get this into your silver layer